Hello there, my name is Samuel Nixon and today I'm going to be conducting a usability test on your website. Now before I actually get testing today, I want to talk through what tabs are on the screen in front of me now, and I want to give an introduction to usability and conversion rate optimization. This introduction will introduce some very key principles in the fields of usability and conversion rate optimization, and I will then refer back to them when I'm testing your website to justify why I'm suggesting certain things on your website. So let's start off by talking about these three tabs. Now the first tab open here is Medium. Okay, Medium is a blogging account, and I have 7 posts here which I'm going to use to introduce some very important theory and things I want to talk about web design, what makes a user-friendly website, and what makes a website that converts well, okay, if we're selling something. Okay, so we have 6 blog posts, and the 7th one is going to be the questions I'm going to use today when I am testing your website. The second tab we have here is your website. Now I want to say at this stage I haven't spent any time at all looking at the interface. The first test I'm going to do, or the first few questions, are going to be testing my first impressions on your website. Okay, so I usually, I always start by testing a website and testing my first impressions. Studies show that users form impressions of a website in less than 1 second. Okay, so the first impressions really are important for the long-term performance of your website. So you want users to ideally understand exactly what your website is about, not roughly what industry it's in, exactly what value it can offer me as an end user. We need to quickly convey this value proposition, justify to the user why they should be on your website and not on a close competitor's. Okay, so like I said, studies show that users form a very quick impression of a website, less than 1 second, and a user can be gone if they don't quickly get an understanding about what can be offered to them. Okay, and I'll go into a lot of theory about what's important to do in the early stages. Okay, the third tab is just Google, just in case I need to Google anything. I probably won't. Okay, but we've got everything sorted. So let's go through these 6 blog posts to start with, and let's introduce some very, very important principles really when we're talking about any website. Then I'll meticulously analyze your website and apply the theory and make some suggestions. Okay, I say meticulously, this is just usability testing, so really I'm trying to get a good overview, pick up on any sort of major areas of friction, and make some suggestions and really get a good analysis of the current state of your website, okay, and where we can go from here. So before I actually even open these blog posts, I'm going to define usability. So usability is the ease and use of a man-made object. So website usability is simply how easy a website is to use. Now there are 2 really important rules of usability that I want to state now. The first rule of usability is don't make me think as an end user. Okay, so we want the interface, or any interface that's user-friendly, to be able to be quickly picked up, for everything to be self-evident or self-explanatory. Okay, so I'll be referring to these rules later on. So we want everything to be very evident, or you can work out what things mean. The second rule of usability is to eliminate needless words. Okay, so there's an emphasis in modern web design to have less copy, not to have walls of text. This can really put a lot of users off, and I'll talk through why shortly. But I just want to outline those 2 key rules. So don't make me think as an end user, and eliminate needless words. Okay, but if we can follow those 2 rules, we'll be a long way to making your website very user-friendly. So let's start off by talking about some user interface design principles. Now I'll just sort of skim over the main points of these blog posts. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way that users interact with any interface. So here is the study of a result by Jacob Nielsen, who's very big in the field of usability. And this was a study in 2006, and he looked at how 232 users looked at thousands of websites. Okay, and this is the heat results, so we're seeing basically a graphical representation of where the heat is going on all these websites. Now what we saw, what he saw from these results, is that users are actually very predictable in the way they interact with a website en masse. Okay, so if we look at thousands of people using a website, we actually see these trends. Okay, and it's very important that I outline these trends. So the first thing I want to say is that users are scanners. We don't see an even distribution of heat, so users are selective. Okay, they don't read a website like a book from left to right. They scan, they are drawn to images, okay, they're drawn to headings, and if we look at the actual results, we see a lot more heat above the fold. Okay, so what we can take from this when we're designing a website, we put our most important information above the fold. We avoid the kind of typical areas where there's less heat, which is kind of down below the fold and to the right. Okay, this is following a law called the law of past experience. So users interact with a website based on their previous web experience. So notoriously, websites have had advertisements down in this kind of place, less important information. So we want to stick to web convention. Okay, so by that I mean if we did have a search box, we would expect it to be in the top somewhere, usually, statistically speaking, central or to the right in the header. If we have a primary navigation, we would expect it to be across the top, perhaps down the side. So we want to stick to web convention, and then naturally, the first law of usability, don't make me think, everything will be self-evident, okay, or self-explanatory. So what we can take from this is that users are scanners. If we're designing a website, we can have clear headings, so which will allow users to scan the website, see what sections are quite quickly, and we don't want to really present a user with a wall of text. We will see less heat, and if we look up here, around 28% of copy is read on average on a website. Now, we do obviously need to factor in, this is why phase 2 will really be analysing your website. I'm not saying no website should have lots of copy. What I am suggesting is that a home page should have less copy. You're going to have certain pages where you are going to have a lot of copy, a lot of words. Okay, so what we can take from this, some little tactics we can do is to have well-defined headers so users can scan and quickly see what a section is and means. We can have keywords down the left-hand margin. Okay, so we actually see what was referred to as an F shape here, and we see a lot of heat down the spine, the left-hand margin. This is where users are scanning. Okay, they're selective, they're looking for information. We can use a diverse range of media. Okay, so some more theory to say here is that users process images 60,000 times faster than the equivalent copy. Okay, so users are drawn to images, so we see a lot of heat where the images are. Okay, the human brain actually processes images, I just said 60,000 times faster. Okay, so one tactic is to use a good diverse range of media. That's kind of why the second rule of usability, to eliminate needless words, exists. Okay, so let's go down a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit about white space. Okay, so white space is the area kind of around content. So if we see where my cursor is going now, this is all kind of the white space on this particular interface. Now this is a very, very important feature in a website. It allows the different sections to breathe, it helps form structure, and it helps scannability, like I mentioned in the graph above, because you can quickly identify these different sections. Okay, the human brain also deals with smaller paragraphs far easier. Okay, so if this particular section here was one longer paragraph as opposed to two smaller paragraphs, it would be far harder for the human brain to read. Okay, so I'm introducing some very important principles. So I've talked about white space, scannability, digestibility. Okay, these are all very important words. So let's move on a little bit further. I want to say at this stage that we can think about web design and the end user as having a constant conversation. Okay, and the conversation is always started by the end user. So any user will land on a website and pose the first question, something like, I am after a new mobile phone contract. The website will respond with the logo, typically, we are Carphone Warehouse. The user will respond, okay, I'm actually after an iPhone. The primary navigation will respond. Usability is all about letting this conversation flow. Okay, if we can keep users on the scent for information, so users usually after a specific piece of information on a website, if we can let this conversation flow, we can retain users on your website, we can make sure your bounce rates are good, and ultimately improve your conversion rates. Okay, so white space can aid readability and scannability, and it can guide users. Okay, so I can quickly see where sections are. We can use styling appropriately. Helps form these more digestible sections as opposed to one large clump of information. So as we move down, we can look at white space as a conversion technique as well. So around this call to action, we have a lot of white space. Obviously notice not actually white, hence why it's also referred to as negative space. It is essentially where there is no content. Okay, so this white space apportions more real estate to this particular call to action, therefore placing more eyes, statistically speaking, on the actual call to action button, okay, which should improve the click-through rate. If we thought about this particular interface without the negative space, so the call to action was pushed up, the content was pushed up, statistically speaking, less eyes would actually be placed consciously and subconsciously on that call to action, impacting conversion rates. It's also worth mentioning at this time there's plenty of theory that goes into a highly converting call to action. We can think about the contrast of the call to action and the background. We can think about hover effects. There's direct correlation to anything that impacts the clickability. And we can also use timing words, action words. There's plenty of tactics to improve click-through rates of call to actions, theoretically. Okay, I want to say at this stage, I'm going to make several suggestions when I'm testing your website. I'm going to be explicitly clear when there are perhaps trade-offs. Okay, so for example, I may suggest making a call to action more 3D. The trade-off could be we're taking away from a 2D design. So a designer may go for a very flat 2D design. A usability expert may suggest a more 3D button, which will work away from that flat design. So finally, white space can be used to draw attention to the right areas. So a lot of conversion rate optimization is about drawing attention to the most fundamental areas of your website with respect to your sales and your conversion rates. Okay, so in some industries, such as fashion, jewelry, we can really draw attention to the product being sold. So we've got plenty of white space around the product, drawing attention in this example, to the Rolex watch. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to talk about in terms of white space, scannability, very, very important principles. That's the biggest blog post I'm going to go through. The rest will be far quicker, and then we can get testing your website. So let's talk about color in web design. Okay, so we have a color wheel here. I will refer back to this very, very shortly. First thing I want to do is talk a little bit about or show you some examples of some high contrasting colors and some low contrasting colors. So if we have a look at these examples here, I won't talk through the colors, you can obviously see those, but we can see if we actually try to read the copy on the top row, it's far easier than reading the copy on the bottom row. Okay, so really what I'm stating here is that we need to make sure your copy is very easy to read, so we don't want to use poor contrasting colors. Okay, if we can avoid that, that's brilliant. And it's the same with our call to actions, really. We want our call to actions to stand out well. If we had a call to action which was yellow, for example, against a white background, it wouldn't stand out as well. Okay, so there'd be an opportunity to improve conversions via a color change. So if we go back up to the color wheel, we can see that colors opposite on the color wheel complement each other the best. Okay, so we can think about blue and orange, green and sort of reds. They benefit, when they're side by side, they benefit from a phenomenon known as simultaneous contrast. Okay, so they basically have a special effect. They enrich the other one when they're side by side. So this can be used very intelligently to improve readability, which is a very, very important component of usability. We want our copy to be easy to read, digestible, and our call to actions to stand out. Now I want to talk a little bit about the emotional implications of the vibrancy of color. That's a fancy way of saying basically that the colors used on your website will have a huge impact on the experience users have, the emotions they're getting from the website, and some fascinating other effects. So let's give a quick example. I'm going to use blue. Now blue is the most popular color in the world. It's consistently throughout the world the most popular. Okay, so they've done studies around the world. Studies on actual end users of a website which is predominantly blue have shown some amazing results, such as lowering the blood pressure of end users, calming the end user down, having the illusion of an increased connection speed. So you can see really that the colors on your website are really, really important, not only for conversion technique, but also for how the user feels about your website. Okay, so every website has a character, it has a personality, and I talk a lot about first impressions. The design of your website will really, really sort of dictate users' first impressions. Okay, so we want it to feel modern, we want it to feel reliable, trustworthy, and have some character ideally. So to use some examples, we can see that 3 of the top 4 social media platforms in the world opt for blue: LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Okay, they're obviously large multinational companies, which fits in with this studies suggesting that blue's the most popular colour around the world. All these other benefits that I mentioned, and it is just a very trustworthy colour. So we see it's very popular with banks, lawyers, and other big companies like IBM, for example, etc. So other colours such as green can suggest growth. So it really depends on what industry we're in. So I'll comment on the colours, I'll comment on the readability, and I'll look at the call to actions as well. So I'm going to end this particular blog post with an example. Now if we think about Facebook, okay, so we found out that Facebook, well, we know Facebook uses blue, which we know from our studies down there is a very popular colour throughout the world. Facebook's obviously a massive multinational company with, I think it's around 500 million users, operating in pretty much every country in the world, if not all. Okay, so it's got a very appropriate colour. It also uses red as its notification system. So if you log into Facebook, you'll see a little red circle. You can see that complements the blue very well. So your eyes consciously and subconsciously are kind of drawn towards it, and you're drawn into the content. So it's a very good technique to draw the user in. Okay, so we can think about using appropriate colours for your industry. We can think about making sure your call to actions are clear, so they complement the background well. And that's basically what I wanted to say there. So that is pretty much the main theory covered. Let's just have a quick look down. This one will take hardly any time at all to explain. I just want to talk a little bit about the website speed. So the speed of your website is very important for the user experience, for your SEO, and for your conversion rate. Okay, now studies show that in 2016, users expect a website to load in around 2 seconds. Okay, that's the kind of golden target time. Any time slower than this will have a negative impact on your user experience. Your SEO is a key variable in Google's determining algorithm, and it bears quite a lot of weight as well. There's around 200 variables, but it bears quite a lot of weight. So it's very important for your SEO, for your user experience, and ultimately your conversion rate. Okay, so we need to make sure your website loads quickly, and it does really impact the end user experience. Okay, so that's what I wanted to mention there. Now the next blog post I'm not sure is going to be relevant yet to your website, so I'll come back to it if we need to. We're talking about the latter stages of the sales funnel, and we're talking about shopping cart abandonment. Okay, so we can think about a website that's having different phases. Okay, so phase 1 will be the impression test. Okay, phase 2 will be testing the home page. Phase 3, testing the search process and the various search processes, the product pages, then the checkout. Okay, so we can think about the user experience being in different stages, and we have dropout at different stages. You know, the latter stages we still need to make sure we're very user friendly, and there's lots of theory on how to make sure a checkout is very user friendly and converting at a high rate too. Okay, so I'm ready to start testing now. These are really just browser statistics, mobile statistics. So let's actually have a look at the questions now. Okay, so I'm going to start off today by doing these questions here. This is going to be phase 1. So phase 1, I'm going to look at your website for around 5 seconds and then look away. So I'll come back to this tab for the first time. I want to say what my first impressions are, what I remember, what my eyes were drawn to, what the service is on offer. Hopefully I want to explicitly know exactly what's being sold, not just that it's in a certain industry. And I want to perhaps say what I want to do next. So it's very important, I want to say at this stage that users basically will be ready to convert once they understand exactly what's being offered to them. So maybe I'd want to convert straight away, it depends on the industry. My early comments just on the tab is that there's no favicon, which we could perhaps introduce, and the tab isn't that informative. It just says homepage. So I'll analyse exactly what industry you're in. So let's start off with these set of questions here, and then we'll move on. Okay. So I believe it was to sell your phone or repair your phone. Now there was a slider image, which I think flicked to a second image. There was a primary navigation with a red background across here. I think it had home and some other options. I think we had a logo up here. I read some of the copy down here which was talking about selling your phone or repairing your phone. I remember an image of a phone, I believe, with a cracked screen. And I think there was a call to action here, but it didn't complement the red very well. I think it was red, the same red colour. Okay, so that's exactly what I remember. I didn't see any social media links. I think there may have been some links up here, maybe shopping cart, I'm not sure, but it wasn't social media. So my first impressions are fairly modern, but it could be more modern. I think there's work to be done on the design slightly. I'll talk in depth what I think can be done. I've just gone through what I remember, so I think I remember the slider, perhaps a call to action, 2 boxes with information about your 2 main services, a primary navigation, a logo. I can't really remember the logo, but I think there was a logo up here and a couple of links up here. Again, I don't really remember what they were. Okay, and I certainly remember an image of a screen which I believe was broken or you know, sort of kind of smashed. So what my eyes were drawn to first, this is a very interesting question really. This really, you know, it's partly subjective, but partly it's to do with the web hierarchy. And like I said earlier, users process images around 60,000 times faster. I was drawn to the slider. I was drawn to the image of the cracked phone, which was quite informative, helped me understand the industry certainly. I think the call to action needs to grab more attention. Okay, as a conversion technique, I think it needs to grab more attention. That's my main concern actually at the moment, is that I didn't really, the call to action didn't grab much attention. I will analyse the website with a lot more depth when I have more time, but I wanted to capture my first impressions first. So at the moment, my interpretation is that this is a website offering repairs and the opportunity to sell your phone. I've certainly read the word iPhone. I'm not sure if we're limited to iPhone, so I'm going to throw up some hypothetical questions here. You know, is it just iPhone? Is it several? Is it all platforms, all types of phones and devices? I'm not sure what the area is. I'm not sure. Is it UK based? Is it anywhere in the UK? Is it a specific area, just London? These are the questions I'm asking now, which are quite important. I also think there's certainly room for improvement in terms of the call to action grabbing more attention. Little things perhaps like linking the telephone number for quick call, perhaps having an email as well. I do remember a telephone number up here somewhere. We could also have an email. But that's basically my comments. I'm also going to have some comments about a slider. Okay, so we'll build on that analysis in phase 2. Okay, so that's really those questions. What I want to do now, well, I've posed a few questions. I said, you know, we can think about a website and the end user as having a constant conversation. The conversation from my point at the moment is still, okay, I'm based in Portsmouth. Do you cover my area? I'm not sure. Do you cover all types of phone? You know, can I take my Android phone in and sell it, or is it just an iPhone? I'm not sure. So I would need to read a little bit more before I'm ready to convert. I probably would want to read some social proof as well. So maybe I'll be looking further down the homepage, looking for some social proof so I know this is a reliable company that have sold and their service has been validated by someone else using it and having a good experience. I perhaps would like to see some social media and some sort of visual signs and indications that this is quite a modern company. Perhaps I would also, before purchasing, want to know a little bit about the company, when they were set up, where they're based, maybe see a map of where they are, who's behind the company perhaps. Okay, so that's my first impressions. What I'm going to do now is go back and show you what I was referring to. Okay, so here's obviously the slider image, and we started on this slide here. So I certainly saw this image here. Call to action was very small, didn't think it complemented the background that well. We need to think a little bit about how we can do that though. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So we had the primary navigation. Okay, the logo is actually central. I didn't really retain much information from up here. We do have an email, which I think is quick linked. We do have the telephone, which I saw. Okay, so I actually really didn't absorb too much information from the header. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. The call to action I think could do with some more attention. There's downsides to a slider. I did read these two bits of information here. Still not sure if it's iPhone. Okay, we can see now from this slide there's plenty of examples of different products. Okay, different models of phone. Okay, so I think that's my first impressions. I have a lot more feedback to give. Okay, so let's move on to phase 2 now. I will kind of follow these questions, but I'm going to go into a little bit more depth as well. Okay, I'm going to come back to this kind of stage here because I want to actually analyse the home page now and talk a little bit about each element, whether I think it complies with recognised usability principles and any major concerns really. Okay, so as this is usability testing, I'm going to go through fairly quickly. So perhaps we could say that the logo would be slightly more intuitive to the left. I'm not saying it's wrong there. Okay, you do see the logo central quite often, but perhaps it will be slightly more conventional. I want to say at this stage a little bit more theory. Symmetry is very important in web design, and for an aesthetically pleasing design, symmetry is a key component. So obviously scan down, I like that it's very symmetrical, which is nice. I like that the email is quick linked. I think it's very important to be able for it to be very clear how to contact the company, and we need to think a lot about segmentation. So segmentation, really, by that I mean we're going to have different types of users who have different preferences. Some will want to contact you by telephone, some by email, some perhaps by live chat, although that comes at a cost. Some will want to see an FAQ perhaps, so we could think about having an FAQ. But I like seeing these options here. They're quite clear how to contact, and the email makes it very, very quick and easy to do as well. So I talk a lot about barriers to conversion. A barrier to conversion really is anything that will put a user off and they may leave your website altogether. We can think about every user as having a reservoir of goodwill. That's basically a breaking point where they're no longer willing to invest the time in your website. Something as simple as having to copy and paste your email and then opening up your email account and then emailing you, that is a barrier to conversion. It's a little bit more of a cost to the end user in terms of their time, which goes into cost-benefit analysis. Okay, I want to get a little bit away a little bit now from the theory and just test your website as an end user. Okay, so perhaps we could move the logo to the left. Perhaps we could link the telephone number for a quick call even on desktop, make it even easier to communicate that way. I like that we've got a search box to cater for users with this preference to interact with the website. A certain proportion of users will land on any website and instantly look for a search box to interact with it. Okay, so if we don't have a search box, they'd be forced to use a different way. They'd be out of their comfort zone. I like that there's a home tab. Okay, this makes it very easy to come back to the home page. Users kind of interact with the website by going down trial paths. Okay, so we may, for example, click shop phones. This wasn't quite for me. I'm going to go back. I'm going to click book a repair. This wasn't quite for me. Let's go back. So it offers the user another chance to get back to the home page, their North Star, quite quickly. Okay, the logo also is. Now, I've just realised you can actually shop for phones as well. So for me, we do have a tab here. I want to talk a little bit about sliders. Now, there are several downsides to a slider on a website. A slider can be quite demanding on a website's loading speed, and we found out in the introduction that's a key component really for usability, for the user experience, and the conversion rate. It can also be very frustrating if you see a user. I've seen thousands of usability studies of real users using websites, and if you see a user, they start reading a slider and then it skips, okay, and they missed what they were analysing. Okay, so they start reading it, absorb the image, start reading the copy, and then it will move on to the next one. Okay, it can be very frustrating, and it can stop them from absorbing a lot of information. Studies also suggest that sliders have a poor click-through rate. So, really, I'm worried that a lot of users won't actually read all the content from the slider. And for example, I overlooked that you sell phones as well. Okay, I personally interpreted this website as a website where you can sell your phone or book a repair. Now, if you actually scroll down, okay, we can see it does tell us here with this box as well. Now, my concern is that is below the fold. As we found out in the introduction as well, users will absorb more content above the fold. They'll make their main judgment of your website based on what they see first off. So, like I keep saying, users form their own impressions, interpretations of a website, and that can carry forward. So my impression was that you just don't sell phones, okay, and that carried forward, and I was surprised when I found out that you did. Okay, so we need to make sure we're quite clear. Personally, from a usability point of view, I would prefer a static cover photo which just told me that you sell phones, repair phones, and buy phones. Okay, if we had a static image where a user can analyze that information statically with a clear call to action, I think that would be more user friendly. Okay, the benefits of the slider is that you can obviously put more information on the same amount of real estate. Okay, but it can have bad effects on the user experience and the sort of comprehension of your website. Okay, and I think I've demonstrated that perfectly. Now, in terms of the primary navigation, it's advised not to have too many tabs. You want users to be able to quickly scan the primary navigation. You don't want too long tab categories either, so no more than kind of 2 or 3 words. So I like the primary navigation. It's nice and easy to scan. Very user-friendly, highlighting the current tab, which gives the user a little extra bearing. Very good to have a home tab, like I said. Very good to have Contact Us. These are positioned conventionally as well. This is where I would expect on a majority of websites to find home and Contact Us. Very, very good primary navigation. Okay, the only thing I would say is perhaps we could have small carrots to let me know as an end user there are subcategories to shop phones. Okay, so as I said earlier, there's different levels of thinking for in terms of cognitive thinking and the human brain. In terms of human brain thinking in general, level 1 is visual thinking. That's what comes easiest to us as users. We can spot images, process them quickly. A couple of levels down is cognitive thinking, okay, where we have to start thinking, okay, what does something mean? I have to interact with this. I have to try to understand what's going on. A form would be, a web form would be an area where you have to start thinking a little bit more cognitively. What do I have to do here? So a little small carrot would let me know visually that there are subcategories to this category. Let me, make sure that these pages aren't overlooked. Okay, so we could just have a little small downwards pyramid triangle would let me know that there are subcategories here. Okay, so I think the usability issues so far, make sure these aren't understated. I personally would have a static image just letting me know a little bit more explicitly that you repair phones, buy phones and sell phones. Have a much clearer call to action which complements the background well, is larger, could use a timing word. Okay, we've actually got a timing word now. Use a hover effect. I think these are actually just part of the slider. Okay, which you can see why it is. But if we had a static image, we could have a hover effect. But yeah, I mean, I'm also going to say the things I like. I like the primary navigation. I like the range of products you sell. Still not 100% sure on your sort of geographical location and limitations. I'm not sure. I'm liking that we perhaps have some social proof down here. Okay, so let's move further down. Haven't seen any social media links. There we go. We've got some tucked away. I would like those to open up on a new tab. They do. Okay, so some quick tips is to open any external link on a new tab so we can retain users on your website. Brand yourself consistently across all social media, so users that do find you and stumble across you on social media click through to your website and they see something they're expecting. Okay, I like the balance of the website, both vertically and horizontally. Feels nice and balanced. To critique this area, I would say a little bit too much copy. It's not too bad though. I like this broken down into 2 smaller paragraphs, much more user friendly. Let's have a quick look. We've got a video. Video content is much more widely accepted in 2016. Hopefully this video isn't too long though. I'd perhaps make it a little bit shorter. but it is a nice media format. It diversifies the balance of media yet further. Okay, and a lot of users will learn about you via that. So social proof. When I talk about social proof, I think it's very important to personalize the social proof if you can. Studies show that users will believe social proof. They'll believe social proof if it's more personal, if it's got an image. Certainly an image is the critical one of the person leaving the review. Maybe an age, a location. These can really help a user quickly feel more connected to the person leaving the review, feel that the review is a little bit more believable. Okay, studies also show that users will subconsciously trust a review from an older individual more. Okay, so these are quite important things to think about. Testing. So I think this may be still a test account. But I like this little sort of layout. It's very, very symmetrical. We've got these nice clear widgets. Let's talk a little bit about reverse copy. So reverse copy is where you have a lighter copy against a darker background. Okay, so here we have reverse copy. It is 12% harder to read than normal copy, like this. So we tried to, in usability, it's advised to not use too much of it. Okay, so here, for example, we could perhaps use a semi-translucent background to improve readability slightly, but I do think it's not too much copy, it's okay. And it's kind of on the slightly darker background in that particular image, so it's okay. But we need to make sure, you know, this copy will be 12% harder to read, but obviously we can then add more colour to our design. Like the logos, like that there's not too much copy, makes it very easy to kind of scan and digest this information. Could perhaps work on these call to actions a little bit. I like the hover effect. We could add a timing word. Okay, it's got a kind of action word, get started. A timing word like today or now could entice subconsciously a little bit more action. Okay, but what I like about this, these individual widgets, is you can quickly scan and see which each one's going to be about. Okay, so I can see book a repair, sell your phone, shop your phones. I can explore the one that's I want to read a little bit more. So I have more concerns with this area of the website, which is really the big part of your website. This is where we're going to statistically get more eyes. This is where users are going to be judging you and getting their first impressions largely from. Okay, so my concerns, to summarize the homepage, my concerns are making it abundantly clear what your full services are. Okay, we need to appreciate that sliders have their downsides. Okay, and for me, for example, you know, I am just one end user, but I'm trying to test this more as a kind of expert and thinking about all different types of users. Okay, we want our website to be able to be used by all types of users with different habits, different experience online. My concerns are that several users will overlook your full services. Okay, you can understand that from scrolling down a little bit, but from up here, there's quite a lot going on in the slider. The call to actions aren't that clear. There's downsides to sliders moving quickly where you don't absorb all the information. Sliders have a poor click-through. A lot of users will skim past the slider. Okay. We could link the telephone number for quick call. 27 characters will cater for an overwhelming majority of search terms. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so we could make that search box either longer or smaller characters. We could also have some better default watermark copy, search our website or something, or search model or something like that, just to entice the user in a little bit more. But if it did have 27 characters, it would cater for an overwhelming majority of search terms. Okay, and by that, say I'll give you an example. So say I was typing iPhone 6. I know this isn't a thing, but I'm just demonstrating that, you know, your copy starts sliding out of the box. You can't actually see the whole term. It's only a very small thing, but all these small suggestions will make your website more user-friendly. Okay, let's have a little think. So that could be linked again. That one could be linked, so it's not linked in the footer. So we've got info at Alpha Phones, which is linked. We've got sales, which isn't linked, so we can link that as well. One other thing that's worth mentioning, okay, I still can't find an FAQ, which would be quite user-friendly. Okay, so I keep talking about segmentation, and, you know, I keep saying I've seen a lot of usability studies and obviously know a lot about the industry of usability, but a lot of users will get questions. Okay, so for example, I have some questions. Other users will have different ones. My questions at the moment are, do you cater for me in Portsmouth? Do you cover a specific model? And there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be thrown up. So some good advice would be to have an FAQ link. A certain proportion of users will hunt down, they're on the scent for information, they're after an FAQ page to try hopefully get an answer there and then. Okay, so around 20% of users have a preference of communication for live chat. I'm not saying go out and get a live chat, okay, because it's obviously comes at a monetary cost, and also it's more appropriate for different websites. A certain proportion of users, an overwhelming majority of users, will have an email as their preferred method of contact. Some will have FAQ. I'm sort of clumping it in as a way of communication because it is a way of getting an answer, hopefully instantly, okay, which is one of the benefits of live chat. So I would like an FAQ page. One really good tactic to use is to answer questions you get quite commonly. So analyze your communication via email, via phone, make sure those questions are answered. If they're not communicated on the interface, on the main website, communicate them on an FAQ page, and we can really help users. That's another barrier to conversion. I talk about reservoir of goodwill a lot. Say I can't get the answer to my question about whether you cater for me in Portsmouth. I could leave the sales funnel, click on a competitor that I know definitely caters for me and go with them. Okay, and the most critical things in usability and really conversion rate optimization is speed. Okay, users are behind closed doors, they're not in front of the business when they're interacting with a website. They can be quite harsh, they can be quite critical, they can be quite impatient. Okay, so if we can communicate and let the conversation flow well, answer any questions, any issues, build trust, we can really help improve our conversion rates. Okay, so what I want to do now is move on to kind of starting going down the sales funnel now. So this is really phase 3. So I want to search for a product, add it to my basket, and go through checkout. And then we'll come back and answer some of the other questions. Okay, so first thing first, I want to talk about the different ways I can currently interact with a website. I can use the search box, I can interact with the primary navigation. So I talked a little bit about making sure these aren't understated, because this is really communicating to me. A lot of users will have a preference for a primary navigation. I would say I'm a user that has a preference for a primary navigation. Okay, so say I'm hunting down, I want to buy a new iPhone 6S or 6. Okay, I can find it quite easily. It would be even easier with a caret, just letting me know that these exist. Okay, and then I can click through. Let's have a look at the iPhone 6, £499. I would have a lot more theory if there was more than one product. Okay, I would analyse if there is a page with more than one product shortly. Okay, so some quick comments. You have quick links to other iPhones, quite user-friendly. You also have breadcrumbs, which are good for your SEO and good for your user experience. So I can jump between levels. Okay, so let's have a look. Now on a page like this is a good example. So we're actually on the iPhone page. When you have several products, there are some very important things to do to make it as easy as possible for a user to make a choice. Okay, we can offer sort features, we can offer filter. Typically and conventionally you would expect sort to be perhaps over to the right and filters to be down the left. I'm not saying it's wrong, but again, it's the law of past experience. Perhaps that's where users would expect them. We want to make it as easy as possible for users to make a choice. So some other important information is to tell the user how many results there are. Okay, so in this example we've got 10 results. This would be even more important if there were loads of results. Okay, so perhaps you can get away with it when there's just sort of 10 or less. Okay, but it's important information to let me know as a user. It's communicating to me, okay, I've got 10. A user is more likely to make a choice and click through to a product, which is obviously what we want them to do, if they've got a smaller number to manage. Okay, the human brain can only deal with a certain amount of products, so we can manage it. If we can get the user to narrow it down to a handful of results, they're more likely to click through to a product. Okay, so we could tell them the number of results. We could offer filters, so if a user does have a budget, but I think we're kind of getting away with it because we haven't got a huge amount of products on any given page. Okay, so let's move on and look at a product page. So I've clicked through to the iPhone 6. Now the most important things to say on this page, it's very important to build trust with the user. Some users will know exactly what an iPhone 6 does. Some will want to know and get a good overview of the product. Okay, so perhaps we could offer this in bullet point and give a much better overview of an iPhone 6. You know, what processor it has, what memory it has. You know, I can't quickly ascertain that information. Okay, a lot of users that are shopping for phones will want to cross-compare, and they want to know. I mean, for example, I'm historically an iPhone purchaser. Okay, so if I was researching an Android, I would want to know a little bit more about the operating system, about the memory. I don't think it's easy in this example, to quickly ascertain that information. This one's better, but perhaps we could have a bullet point so I can quickly digest that overview. A lot of users won't want to spend too much time on your pages. They'll want to quickly go through, understand a quick overview of this product and move on. Okay, so maybe it was just this example, but I find it very difficult to understand. There we go, it has got the information. I think we could perhaps present the information so that users can bite the information quicker, get an overview, then read the more in-depth description if they want to. Okay, reviews are going to be important. I talk a lot about perception. Are users judging your website, your industry, purely what's in front of them quite often? So I'm picking up on little things. You know, I like that you've got social media. I also really like that you're very upfront about your payment options. The lack of review content is perhaps influencing my perception of you as a company and how many sales you've had. Okay, so if we can deploy strategies to get more reviews being left, then that's good as well. So other important things, we can really offer the user as much information as possible within the limitations of web design. Okay, and as much perception as possible within the limitations of web design. So if we think about a user going into a real shop, what can they do? They can pick an iPhone up, they can look at it from different angles, they can zoom in and look at the quality of the material it's made from. So what can we do in web design to replicate that? We can offer a range of images from different angles so I can get that perception. Yes, we've got a front-back view. Perhaps if we saw this in someone's hand, we could get a better perception of what it would look like in my hand. If we had zoom, okay, very small amount of zoom, we could zoom in and see the product and the quality of the image. The actual quality of the image itself is very important too. Okay, especially with more expensive goods where risk is exacerbated, users must get a very good impression and interpretation of the website. So the main things we want to do is get that good impression, interpretation, and really build the trust, both from making it feel like you know you're selling, you're making it abundantly clear what the overview and what the product's about. Hopefully got some review content. Okay, social share is excellent to reach out to your social network. It's also very user-friendly to offer and suggest other products if this wasn't quite the product for them. Finally, a very clear call to action. So we can think about perhaps using a more complementary colour. Again, it's red against red. It's difficult. I mean, if we did go back to the colour wheel, I think it's red and blue. I mean, we could start thinking about using a different call to action, but we need to be careful. I like the hover effect. I would say perhaps conventionally I would expect this information to be over to the right. I want to give a very quick example and use Etsy as a very user-friendly product page. Okay, I'm just going to spend 1 minute showing you a product page which I think is very user-friendly and is geared up for conversions. I want to talk about why. Okay, so if we take this random product as an example, I want to talk a little bit about the call to action being very clear. So they've used dominant colours very sparingly. We can see a lot of attention is consciously and subconsciously going to the call to action. We've got a zoom feature, we can see the product from different angles, and we can see the product in action. Okay, so I can kind of visualise it in a home. But you know, most importantly, there's a lot of attention going to this call to action. We've got an overview, so we're not presented with loads of copy. We're getting an overview. I can just get a bite of information about this product. It's not quite for me, I can move on. If it is for me and I need to know more before I'm ready to convert, I can go down and read more. Okay, and the call to action and overview are to the right, the product image is here. So I think perhaps that would be a slightly better layout if we had the product, we had a better range of images, perhaps a call to action which complements the background better, more of an overview as opposed to loads of information. If we think about cost-benefit analysis, the cost at the moment will be the user's time having to read this much copy. Say I wanted to understand the size of the processor or the size of the memory. I would actually have to invest quite a few minutes reading through all that. If it just had that main information in bullet points, I can get it in less than 5 seconds. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to talk about. Let's have a quick look at book a repair, so I've got a bit more of a feel about a different service. Okay, this is quite nice and user-friendly. I'm going down the path to hopefully find the right product for me. Let's go for an iPhone 6. We've got costs, broken screen. I like that it gives a good quote. It's quite expensive. It is an iPhone 6. Data recovery, keypad or home button repair. I don't know what that is. Network signal problem, software fault. I think this is quite user-friendly. So let's go broken screen. Select and continue. Let's have a look at this service page. Walk-in service. That's an additional charge. Post your device. Additional charge for this option is £65, with a pick-up and drop-up in London City, £75. So I'm still not 100% sure if you would cater for me in Portsmouth. Okay, you're based in Surrey. You certainly cover London. I think, it's postal. I'd imagine you can. Annual repair plans. Okay, so you've got quite a few different things. One very quick thing I want to talk about is it's kind of a psychological principle. Users are they don't really know often they don't know what sort of prices products and services are online. One very intelligent tactic is to place your most expensive price first. Now why they do that, why that's good, is because users will kind of see the first price, they'll anchor their decision and their kind of judgment on future prices based on that. So if I saw £500 first, that would seem relatively very, very cheap, as opposed to whether I saw that first, okay, then that seems very, very expensive. Okay, so that's perhaps one tactic. You could also suggest one popular plan, okay, which can kind of make the choice for the user. That's another psychological principle. If you kind of have too much choice, often users don't make a choice. They become paralyzed. So if you can kind of choose or suggest one, you can kind of entice a user to pick one thing. So sell your phone. I want to talk a little bit about some theory here. There's direct correlation between the number of fields on a form and the completion rate. Basically, users will quickly judge a form. They'll see how many fields there are. They won't factor in whether the fields are mandatory or not. They'll just make a quick judgment. Okay, that looks like it may take a couple of minutes to fill in. I'm not willing to invest that time. Compare that to if the form looked like it would take 30 seconds to fill out, you would get a higher completion rate. So really what we can do tactics-wise is to eliminate needless fields, make the form look as easy as possible to fill out, have very clear field validation, which you do. Okay, we've got clearly highlights which fields the errors exist in, and it also tells you one by one, okay, we need to fill in this field. Okay, so it's quite good field validation. Perhaps we could have a little bit more emphasis on this call to action. It kind of gets dominated by this styling here. Perhaps we don't need quite so heavy styling. But that's my kind of comments there. Let's have a quick look at About Us. So I'm kind of scanning all pages now. So talking a little bit about the grading. I'm a little bit aware of this industry. So we've got different grades for the phones and the conditions they're in. I know for a fact that a lot of users will want to, or will perhaps feel reassured by knowing a little bit about your company, where you're based. You could have a map showing exactly your location, maybe a little bit about your background, so it's a little bit more personal. Trust is a very important theme. Okay, trust is going to come from several sources and variables. To a certain degree, how professional your design is. To a certain degree, your social proof and your reviews, and to a certain degree, perhaps some little bit of information about you. Some users will want to know a little bit about the company. Now, especially we need to think about this industry. Your phone can have a lot of personal information. It can also be quite expensive. We've seen some of these prices for a lot of users. That's going to be quite a lot of money. Okay, so we could make sure we cover trust in this particular variable. Okay, maybe it will be on the Contact Us page. Let's have a look. Okay, so you do have a map here. We could link these for quick call. That one is linked, so we're a little bit inconsistent with our linking. Naturally, iOS will link any telephone number, but it is quite user-friendly to have it on on desktop as well. I do like that it gives the location. That builds a little bit more trust. I still don't know a huge amount about you. Contact form, the same rules apply in terms of making it look easy to fill out, having good field validation. I want to go back to the home page. I want to talk a little bit more about what area you cover. I want to just point out how I have scanned this website. So you can really sort of see how I have been quite selective in what I've actually absorbed, certainly with the copy. This is actually how users will interact with the website. So I'm going back now. We buy all kinds of phones. Got a problem with any of your devices? Phone, iPad repair, shop for iPhones, test review, homepage. Okay, this is quite good information. This is telling me what you specialise in. We are located at Kingston upon Thames. I apologise for that noise. Alpha phones we buy. Let me just mute my iMac. Our goal is to provide the cheapest, professional and speedy service at all times. Okay. All our mobile phones are checked with a company called CheckMend to ensure the phones are not barred, lost or stolen. Okay, our mobile phones go through a quality control check. Okay, this is quite important information here. I want to talk a little bit about value proposition and building that trust a little bit more. This is just the kind of content I wanted to see. Perhaps I'd like to see this on the About page as well. I fear that a lot of users won't actually read that. And it's quite personal information. Perhaps I'd expect to find that here as well. Okay, you do have that information there as well. Okay, I beg your pardon. So what I would say, my issues with this page is it's very text-based. You want to draw users in. Even if we just had that same image and wrapped the content around it, it would be more inviting copy. Okay, so I think we need to diversify the balance in media. So yes, I mean the most important pages are your home page, your sales funnel, searching for the products, your product pages, your checkout. But these pages you need to make sure are still very user-friendly, inviting as well. Okay, because a lot of users will just analyze this, judge it as a wall of text, and move on. So let's actually go down and search for iPhone 6. I want to see what it's like to search via the search box. Okay, we've got quite accurate results, which is nice. We could have, if I start typing iPhone, you could have suggested, results. So it kind of lists the iPhones as you go down. Sort by price, let's just check. Obviously we need to make sure the functionality works. Okay, which it does. I haven't really seen too many bugs, which is nice. Users are judging you purely on your interface. Little bugs can be very unprofessional and take away from my perception of you as a company. Now what I want to do now is actually go further down the sales funnel. Let's say I want to buy this iPhone 6. There's several categories, so I want to be notified. I want the option to continue shopping or check out, which I have. I think it's very user-friendly to present your payment options throughout the sales funnel. I think it should be very clear how to check out. Again, we could place more visual attention on the checkout. Really more visual attention is going to this styling. Red is a very dominant colour. It will grab a lot of attention. We need to be very careful with red. I know this is quite a radical redesign, but you could, for example, change your predominant colour to blue, which we know is a very trustworthy colour, and use red as your main call to actions, which we know complements blue very well. Almost like that Facebook example. And I would try to perhaps use less dominant red in the styling. We really want to place, every page on a website has a core purpose. This one should be reminding you of what's in your basket and making it very obvious how to proceed. So if that, for example, was red and this styling wasn't here, within the main content it would be much clearer. That's how you proceed forward. Very user-friendly to remind the user what they've added to their cart and the price, and they can kind of edit. Okay, I'm assuming all this functionality works. Very user-friendly though to remind them. Many users will add something to their cart, shop on, go to the cart, and visual reminders are the best way to go. Now users expect guest checkout, so I'm looking for guest checkout. Sign in, you need to create an account, place an order, shop faster, track existing. Okay, I'm a returning customer. So it doesn't look like I have guest checkout, which will be a barrier to conversion for some users. So I'm going to have to register. Let's just put some test information in. I'm just going to use some personal information. Okay, Okay, so I'm able to go through quite quickly, which is good. I like the different sections. Again, you know, the less fields we have, the higher the completion rate will be. I would really like guest checkout. I'm not sure if you do that for a reason. Perhaps you sort of need that sort of security measure, perhaps. Just type this in. Okay, I don't know why that's required, but I've filled it out already. Why is that saying that? It's a bit strange. So I'm not sure if that's actually a bug. Oh, no, sorry, it's required. Okay, that's a very minor thing, but what I was going to say is that field validation was closer to the other field, the field where the error actually wasn't existing. Okay, that's a very small thing. So it appears like we've registered. Okay, my account, sign up. Okay, so we'll check out now. What I'm looking for now is a well-structured process. Select a billing shipping address. One thing we could do is perhaps number the steps. The numbers form a very logical process in a human mind. Okay, so step 1, 2, 3, 4. It can also help suggest progress as you go down and complete the various steps. Okay, so I think I've got those options there. Shipping method, payment. I quite like that I don't have to fill that out again. I would have liked guest checkout though, if I'm being honest, and I think many users will. Okay, delivery address, where are we? So here we go, shipping, confirm order. So I don't know if I'm going to get redirected now. Perhaps I'd like a little bit more information. I like that it repeats the payment options. I don't know what's going to happen now though. Let's confirm the order. I haven't entered any payment information, so it's not going to go through. There we go. Now I'm forwarded. Okay, so it looks like you only have PayPal. Obviously, you can pay with the checkout. So you've got PayPal set up. Maybe it needed to be a little clearer that you would get redirected. But in general, you know, what I think could be improved would be making sure the field validation is closer to the field, perhaps numbering the steps, certainly having guest checkout. Okay, so let's go back to the questions. I've kind of covered 90% of what I want to say now. What do you think the purpose of this website is? Well, it's clearly offering services, selling phones, buying phones, and repairing phones. This was almost exactly my initial impressions, although I didn't quickly pick up that it was also selling phones. I'm still not 100% sure on your geographical area you cover. I think it's probably the whole of the UK. Perhaps we need to be clearer on that. So who do I think the intended audience is? Anyone with a smartphone. I'm not sure if you cover kind of iPads or anything. I think it's just phones. Let me just go back to that question. So the audience really is anyone with a phone who wants to buy a phone, sell a phone, or repair a phone. So could I find what I was looking for? Yeah, I mean, I found it easy to navigate. I had a plethora of, if I just go back, ways to search, the search box, the primary navigation. I could have clicked on one of these links. I think it needed to be clearer, your 3 main services, okay, and I think the slider, I demonstrated how the slider can be a little bit misleading. And also we could perhaps have had a small caret just to let me know that these exist, okay, quite important really. Was it easy to get to the home page from within the site? It certainly was. So there's a test called the trunk test in usability. Say I landed on this URL as opposed to the home page. How quickly can I get back to the home page? You would expect the logo to be a link back, but we've also got the home page. Highlighting the current tab is also very user-friendly. It gives me bearing and control over the website. Okay, so I thought that was very, very strong. Was there something missing? Well, I would say on the pages that I sampled, there was a lack of images. I wanted that extra perception of the product, an overview as well. There was a lack of review content. Perhaps it needs to be more informative about your sort of range of your geographical range of locations that you cover. You know, maybe you do, and I've just overlooked it. Okay, because I am just an end user like anyone else, and I do scan. I'm trying not to, but it's very difficult not to. It's just how the human brain interacts with a website. Okay, I like these, by the way. I like this delivery and returns. I thought an FAQ page was missing as well. Could you tell what the page was about? Yep, no issues at all, although I think it needs to be a little bit clearer. It was also selling phones. Nothing was obtrusive at all. Nothing was too well hidden, certainly that I didn't find, unless there's something that I still haven't found. Problems with the colour scheme? Yes, I mean the call to actions could have been much clearer. They didn't really complement the red. Red on red doesn't complement each other very well at all. Okay, so yeah, I mean I think the colours could be better. Generally in web design you want to stick to a handful of colours. Okay, so there's quite a few different bright colours. I'm not saying it's wrong, but you know, perhaps it would look more aesthetically pleasing with less different colours. Certainly want clearer call to actions here. Reverse copy is 12% harder to read, so I did want to just say that again as well. So easy to read font style and size. Okay, I've just mentioned reverse copy is a little bit harder to read. Now here, for example, it's very hard to read. We could have a semi-translucent background box to it. Some of this is a little bit harder to read. We do want to make sure we break longer paragraphs into smaller paragraphs. This is kind of the absolute limit. I wouldn't want any longer than this. Okay, on some pages, I felt that there was too much copy. It needed to be a better diverse range of media. So how did you find the layout? On the whole, very good. Nothing really else to say there. I think it was very good, sort of typical hierarchy of information. How intuitive and helpful was the navigation? Excellent. Okay, I commented straight away that I really like this primary navigation. I would just add the caret and perhaps have an FAQ, but you don't want this primary navigation to become too long. The search box could have been a little bit longer or cater for, have more characters to cater for all terms. That's about that there. Did you notice advertising? No. Newsletter sign up? No. Video and search box? Yes, and I talked about those. So I don't think there's a newsletter sign up. That's another way you could retain more customers. You could have a newsletter and blog. There's not actually a blog. It's a great way of marketing in 2016. You know, make posts about iPhone repairs in your business. You can retain users with a newsletter sign up. Like I said earlier, around 50%, still a majority of users prefer email contact as their way of communication. So what would encourage you to return? If I saw a sale or offer, if I got a newsletter, a blog post, if there was more good reviews, I'd probably be more inclined to actually make a purchase as well. So my 3 favourite and least favourite things. My favourite was probably the range of products being sold and different models being used. Second would be the overall design is very symmetrical vertically and horizontally. Third would be the different ways to search. Okay, search box, primary navigation, all these boxes here. My least favourite things would be lack of review content, lack of images on the product pages, and clearer call to actions throughout. Okay, and I also didn't like the slider, and I would have liked guest checkout. So one thing, what would it be? I would say all those 5 things I listed at the end there are quite equally weighted. So I'm now going to edit this video down, compress it, and send it to you. Thank you for your time.